One. Today the topic that has been given to me is Gender-Specific Association of MAFLD, Implications for India. So the terms which will be frequently coming is sexual dimorphism. It is the differing characteristics of diseases in terms of incidence, clinical manifestations, and outcomes between two sex, male and female. So gender and sex are two different terms. Sex, the differences are the biological disparities between male and female, which is attributable to the chromosomal makeup without any influence from the culture. And gender differences define the socio-cultural influences that lead to differences in male and female specific roles, behavior and relations. So there can be more than two genders. NIH policy introduced SABV term, which is sex as a biological variable. To advance our knowledge of the influences of sex and gender in health and disease, researchers must account for sex and gender in their research design and reporting. So they introduced 4 C's: consider sex and gender into account, collect and tabulate sex-based data, characterize, analyze sex-based data, and communicate sex-based data. So what is already known is that women are at reduced risk of NAFLD during the reproductive age group. But after menopause, women have a comparable prevalence of NAFLD as men. And sex hormones and gender habits interact with NAFLD factors to alter the risk profiles and phenotypes of NAFLD. So these are the various studies which are tabulated side by side. So these are population-based studies which shows the sex differences in frequency of NAFLD, fatty liver and fibrosis. So most of these studies, as you can see in this tabulated format, the prevalence in males is considerably higher, 38 as compared to 21, and so on in all these studies. And striking difference here, 41% against 18%. The important thing is this, that many of the studies, they also considered the menopausal status. And menopause came out to be an independent risk factor for prevalent NAFLD among women here. And if you see these two studies, one from China and US, so on the baseline, the prevalence difference was 32% versus 13%. But when they analyzed the post-menopausal group, so it increased to 27.6% and coming closer to the male prevalence. Same as with this study, baseline was 22% to 9%, the gender difference, but it was 19% when considering the post-menopausal group. This is the prevalence of NAFLD and fatty liver in children. So this was a meta-analysis. So 9% in males, adolescent males, and 6% in adolescent females. This is based on 15 studies, and based on 27 studies, 30% against 22%. A few more studies here, which also includes a study from India in diabetes, type 2 diabetes mellitus patients. But here, the female prevalence was higher, but again, the age group was 60 to 70, which is in the post-menopausal age group. And then again, one study from Bangladesh where the prevalences are almost comparable, but rest, in majority of the studies, the male prevalence was higher. Coming to this, this is a large data from China, more than 75,000, where the prevalence of MAFLD was stratified as per sex. So this total, this sky blue line, if you see, so overall peak comes here at the age of around 50 to 59 years, and it is around 44%. But males, the peak almost reaches in 40 to 49% in 52% of the males. And in females, the peak is in the post-menopausal age group of 70 to 79. So if you can see, this is a beautiful crossover in the prevalence. So it rises in the males and then decreases. And this crossover occurs between 60 to 70 age group. So before the age of 65, the prevalence rate was higher in males than in females, whereas after 65, it was lower in males than in females. This is a large cross-sectional study in obese children and adolescents. So here, the data was around 3,000 for 2 to 18-year-olds. And sex difference was apparent in early childhood at around 6 years of age, long before the sex hormones start to rise. And if you see it, the prevalence in boys tends to stabilize at the age of 11 years, but in girls, this pink line, it peaks temporarily here. So liver function and liver imaging examinations might be necessary for young children, especially those who are obese. And the sex hormones are related to the severity of NAFLD as well, and they are influenced by puberty and abdominal fat accumulation. And there are many unanswered questions like sex-specific prevalence of NAFLD in young children, the gender-related effects of NAFLD beyond hormones, and the mechanism of NAFLD sexual dimorphism in kids. This is another study in pediatric population. So in this also, NAFLD was more frequent in boys, and only ALT and no other clinical or metabolic variables were associated with NAFLD in obese patients. And other variables were associated in NAFLD only in girls. HOMA-IR, this is visceral adiposity index, triglyceride levels, and ALT. And ALT cutoffs were 28.5 and 27.5 in females and males. So NAFLD should be intentionally screened in patients with obesity, particularly in boys. So why is this? Why such a difference exist? So women and men, they store surplus calories differently. So this is a female body where subcutaneous adiposity is predominant, and in male body visceral adiposity is there. So gluteofemoral subcutaneous in women versus visceral in men. So and this is not equivalent, the adiposity. So here in every section you can see the male and female comparison at every level in this pathogenesis. So then there is this vicious cycle of systemic inflammation, which is again not equal in both the sexes, and sarcopenia and insulin resistance. So this is of course contributed by increased calorie intake, decreased BMR, and reduced physical activity. So this leads to surplus energy. Now this adiposity leads to increased energy influx to liver, and then triglyceride synthesis increase, which is again more seen in predominantly in males, which leads to fatty liver here. So then free fatty acid oxidation is more in females. So the oxidative stress is increased in males, and lipoapoptosis, and then inflammation here. So all these steps are different in males and females. Then again, fibrogenesis is seen more in males, and tumor generation in males. Then all of this is again influenced by intestinal microbiome and bile acids. So there is an interplay of intestine microbiome, muscles, and adipose tissue here, which is mainly involved in the NAFLD pathogenesis and the various sex differences. So intestinal microbiome is also different in males and females. It is more evident here. So in this blue zone, these are the male indicators, main risk factors for NAFLD development in male, and this red ones are in females. So three categories: obesity, which is the adipose tissue component, then dietary fats and sugar, and lifestyle. So as I said, in males, it is more visceral fat, more visceral lipolysis, insulin resistance is higher, and free fatty acid delivery to liver is higher, and higher liver hepatic glucose production and de novo lipogenesis. It is completely completely opposite in females. So subcutaneous fat is more, insulin sensitivity is more, free fatty acid is less, delivery to the liver, and reduced hepatic glucose production and lipogenesis. Then in dietary fats and sugars, here this is fatty acid oxidation that is reduced in males and increase in females. Then physical activity. So although generally women have a lower physical activity than men, when exercise, they oxidize more fats due to increase in type 1 muscle fibers. So type 2 fibers, which are present in males, they are the fast oxidative glycolytic fiber, FOG fibers, which are easily fatigable. So they are less fatigue resistant. So these are the basic differences in the risk factors. So again, these are the three key players: skeletal muscle, adipose tissue, and gut liver axis. So positive calorie balance, unfavorable genetic pattern, free fatty acid accumulation, and in hepatocytes, lipotoxicity, and multicellular damage. So this is how it differs between male and female. Then again in this study, all the boxes with blue, except this difference in the adiposity, this is mainly seen more in males at all the levels of progression from NAFL to cirrhosis and HCC. So fatty liver, NASH, fibrosis, and everywhere it is male preponderance. Then in females, basically the premenopausal to postmenopausal, all the changes that postmenopausal females have are similar to what are found in males in the baseline. So everything, if you see here in all these three important points, everything switches to the male sides. Visceral adipose tissue increases more than subcutaneous adipose tissue, so insulin sensitivity decreases and hepatic lipid deposition increases. And then all the other diseases, metabolic risk increases. Then is the gut microbiome and gender. It is also an important factor in which varies between the two genders. So starting from the birth, various factors affect the gut microbiome, including the type of delivery, type of feeding, and at adolescent stage, estrogen versus testosterone. So estrogen influences gut microbiota diversity, and studies have shown that maintaining an appropriate estrogen level protects against NAFLD-related events. So close relationships between sex hormones and the development of NAFLD and effects on gut microbiota diversity implies that sex hormone-mediated alteration of the gut microbiota may contribute to the development of NAFLD in adolescents and predominantly seen in males. Again, this disruption of gut microbiota, this is also linked to NAFLD pathogenesis, and sex differences are also seen in this aspect, hence leading to the difference in the microbiome. Then is the genetic variability. So PNPLA3 variant, it also shows sexual dimorphism in development of fibrogenesis and severity of NAFLD fibrosis. So this variant, but this variant is seen to be predominant in women than in men, as per the studies that I came across. So predominant association between PNPLA variant with NAFLD in women but not in men, and this may mainly result from the variation in the hormone or gene or their interaction. So however, also in the gender specific analysis of a NASH cohort, effect of PNPLA variant was predominantly in females on histological NAFLD. But it is necessary to test whether there is a true and reproducible interaction between estrogen and PNPLA in well-defined population cohorts. Then this article in Nature, this also studied the interaction between this estrogen receptor and PNPLA variant, and this was also found higher in women than in men, and it also determined the development and severity of fatty liver disease. So this functional interaction may contribute to fatty liver disease in women. So what are the implications of MAFLD? Implications of this gender-specific association. So I have tried to divide it into 4 parts in diagnosis, lifestyle interventions, therapeutics, and public health implications. So despite the high prevalence of NAFLD, diagnostic and management approaches in clinical practice are variable. There are various guidelines across globe. America and Asia Pacific guidelines, they adopt for a high index of suspicion in high risk individuals. European and Latin American, they focus their more impetus on the screening in individuals with persistently high liver enzymes, METAS, type 2 diabetes and obesity. But point is early and more frequent screening, and with more focus in male patients, maybe particularly with those who have high risk factors such as obesity and type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and also alcohol. So for our country, these guidelines were released in 2021. So at the field level, basically we have this gender stratification based on waist circumference, at least for identifying high risk individuals at the field level. So ground level workers, ASHA ANMs, they have to refer a patient as a suspect of NAFLD if waist circumference is more than 19 males and more than 18 females, and or presence of diabetes. So only these two criteria. And then at PHC level, FIB-4 is calculated with 2 or 3 tests, and then according to that, patient is referred for either lifestyle intervention or to a specialist. Then again, LSM plays a role. If FibroScan is available, then this is further how the patient is referred from ground level to tertiary care center. So here the important points to notice is that risk prediction tools, they do not consider the effects of sex on liver related outcomes, and sex also luckily does not influence LSM values in FibroScan. So risk prediction tool, that they have the scope to include the gender in the cutoff, considering the cutoff values for identifying to refer to a hepatologist. Then second is the lifestyle interventions. So current implications on lifestyle intervention. Current management focuses on treating the associated comorbidities and reducing cardiovascular risk by encouraging smoking cessation and prescribing lipid lower medication, etc. So if we see these two, so these two are showing different results. So a Korean study showed that women with NAFLD have an increased risk of cardiovascular and liver related mortality. And US study showed that men with NAFLD have an increased death from cancer or cardiovascular causes compared to women. So different results in both of these. So more data is required before recommending sex-specific risk factor mitigation or reduction. Then again, interestingly, as we know that weight loss of at least 5% of body weight reduces fatty liver, but 7 to 10% improves NASH. However, in women, it has been seen that a 7 to 10% weight loss is associated with a lower probability of NASH resolution, highlighting a need for sex-specific weight loss targets as well. So optimal amount of weight loss required to produce beneficial effects in fatty liver in post-menopausal women is also unknown. Third, coming to the therapeutics. So currently, as per my understanding, no licensed medications are there, and vitamin E and pioglitazone are recommended in some guidelines. So coming to vitamin E first. So vitamin E is demonstrated to benefit ALT, ST, fatty liver, and to some extent inflammation and ballooning. But long-term vitamin E has also shown to have some side effects like heart failure, prostate cancer. So sex-specific outcomes were not reported in any of the meta-analyses or in the individual studies included. Hence, the implication here is that sex-specific analysis of treatment response and adverse effects are required, as the risk-benefit ratio of vitamin E in NAFLD may differ between men and women. Then pioglitazone also have some beneficial effects, but the side effects are there. But interestingly, women with NAFLD and prediabetes or type 2 DM treated with pioglitazone have more significant reductions in liver fat as compared to men with similar comorbidities. And this might be due to a more significant reduction in insulin resistance by pioglitazone in women. Then lastly, in therapeutics is the reproductive hormones impact. So current evidence is insufficient to recommend hormone replacement therapy as a treatment for NAFLD in postmenopausal women. But in a small study that included men and women with NAFLD, combined treatment with spironolactone that also has anti-androgenic effects and vitamin E reduced hepatic fat scores after 52 weeks. And in PCOS, spironolactone use has shown to improve insulin resistance and lipid levels. Whether the anti-androgen effect of spironolactone would modify the risk of developing NASH in women with PCOS, it is still an area that needs to be explored further. Then there is a large-scale study, DAISY PCOS, that I came through. This is dissecting androgen excess and metabolic dysfunction and integrated systems approach to PCOS. So in a large cohort of women, they found that androgen excess increased the risk of fatty liver disease. So again, the role of hormones, and then research into the role of testosterone replacement therapy in men with hypogonadism and MAFLD is ongoing. So these are few unmet needs in clinical practice, mostly focusing on premenopausal and postmenopausal. that evidence for influence of sex on the non-invasive markers like FIB4, NFS, etc. Sex-specific prediction model tools as well, sex-specific weight loss targets, and evidence for sex-specific response to drugs in clinical trials. Then lastly, public health implications. So public health implications I have tried to divide in 6 categories. So these are urban versus rural gender differences. So urban, there is this study from AIIMS where they compared urban versus rural, and then the gender differences between 30 to 60 years for 2 years. So 800 something males in urban and in rural respectively. So if we see here, majority females are higher in urban in 40 to 49 and 50 to 60 years, that again approaching the post-menopausal stage. And if we see here, then females in this area as well, in rural also post-menopausal, and here it is particularly lower in the age group of 40 to 49. But then they showed NAFLD based on ultrasound and NAFLD diagnosed by CAP scores. Through age and sex standardized NAFLD prevalence diagnosed by ultrasound did not show any urban, rural or gender difference significant. But NAFLD diagnosed by CAP score in FibroScan, they showed as a much higher prevalence in urban than rural. But again, they did not give the gender area in this. So the second implication is on the cultural sensitivity. So in field, we have to be careful for the tailored messaging, culturally sensitive health messages that resonates with each of the gender, and involvement of local community leaders. And then healthcare system strengthening to facilitate early diagnosis and management of NAFLD, and to recognize and address gender-specific issues related to NAFLD. So in this health system strengthening area, ILBS, we have been working with 3 states, Meghalaya, with Principal Secretary and NHM. Chhattisgarh, we trained 33 districts completely saturated with trainings of medical officers. And then Jharkhand, 2 tehsils in Ranchi. So this is health care system strengthening. Then 4th is gender-specific screening program. So high-risk groups again are men and post-menopausal women. And lifestyle interventions to be gender-specific. As I said, weight loss targets have to be specific, physical activity varies and all, and hormonal considerations, so personalized medical advice, particularly for post-menopausal women. So coming to last few slides on ILBS data from the various projects. So SMILES is Stronger India through a million health educated students, in which we do risk stratification in 18 to 25-year-olds for NAFLD. IMELD is Indian Metabolic and Liver Disease, which is a task force project we just completed in April in Jaipur. And Live Healthy, which is the Mylan Van project, which runs in Delhi. So surprisingly for SMILES, which covers this young adult population in 18 to 25 years. So risk stratification is red, yellow and green. High risk, moderate risk and low risk. So here in females, females were showing more prevalence in red, slightly more in red and more in yellow as compared to males, which is different from what we have known in the past few slides. And also we asked to self-report acanthosis nigricans, which is an important predictor for fatty liver, type 2 diabetes. So this was also higher in females. Then gender-wise self-reporting of waist circumference, which is an important tool for us in the field to see the risk. Females again show 43% more waist circumference than males, than the cutoff. And BMI stratification, again in the overweight category, females were little higher, and in obese, this was lower as expected, but in 18.5 to 22.9, this was, this is normal. This was seen as expected, that in females, the normal category BMI was more. Then coming to the Indian Metabolic and Liver Disease study, which we screened 3,200 individuals. So fatty liver in males again, in 3 tehsils, 56%, as these are FibroScan based, and compared to females, it was higher. And for Live Healthy, more than 30,000 screenings of, again, females had lower odds of having MAFLD, and this showed male preponderance. So to conclude, we have to tailor NAFLD management to individual patients. So careful consideration of some of the determinants of NAFLD heterogeneity, which includes, as discussed, sex and reproductive status, also genetics, intestinal microbiota, endocrine disorders, cardiovascular, cardiometabolic assessment, and physical activity. So these are different, and we need to develop a more targeted approach based on these factors. And to that end, more studies are needed to validate and refine tools like microbiota signatures and polygenic risk scores that might be useful for risk stratification and therapeutic decisions. And in addition, predictive AI models for clinicians, discovery and clinical validation of biomarkers and targets, and clinical studies that clarify this. And there has to be multi-component therapeutic approach, lifestyle intervention, gene therapy, intestinal microbiota. I mean, all the things that we discussed, this therapeutic approach should benefit from including all these parameters. So early intervention, lifestyle modification, and gender-sensitive healthcare approaches are critical to mitigating the impact of MAFLD. Thank you.